following is a TTC Uncle Lou News special report.
I'm not a smart man. 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 I'm not a smart man.
Alright. Good morning. Thanks for watching here. Another, basically, pointless edition of Uncle Lou Interviews here. Very special guest. Yes, it's TTC member again. This is two TTC members, 2 days in a row, which is just amazing and unbelievable. But we have an Alabama Gump with us. An Alabama fan with us today. Yep, most of you guys know who he is. I know all you guys on the college side of the TTC know who he is, and most of you NFL guys probably do too. Yep, Bama Fanman. So go ahead, introduce yourself, sir. Tell us, because to be honest, I'm not even sure, but how long have you been making TTC videos? And do you have any other team that you pull for besides the Clemson Tide?
Yeah, appreciate it there, Lou. I've been doing TTC videos, basically Alabama videos, since about 2011. And I do videos here and there, some similar to yours, actually, kind of outside the box kind of videos, but mostly I stick to TTC. Obviously, you saw my video about TTC video makers.
Yeah, it was amazing.
But yeah, I'm sure it was an amazing video. But basically, I've been on doing this will be my 5th season. Joined the TTC about 2011 and been doing Alabama videos ever since. And that's what I enjoy doing, so I'm going to keep doing it.
And now, are you a lifelong Alabama fan or are you a convert?
No, sir. Born and raised. I was born in Alabama. I was there until I was about 16 years old, so born and bred Crimson Tide. It's a family thing. If you go to my family reunions, you have to wear Crimson Tide gear. You're not allowed there. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
We'll just put it that way. I almost got kicked out for not wearing it one day.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned this before, but I have on my mother's side of the family, a lot of that family either still lives or at one time did live in Alabama. And they're pretty much split 50-50 between Alabama and Auburn. I have two uncles in particular who are huge football fans, and one is diehard Alabama, the other is diehard Auburn. And they're old enough to the point now where they can get along at family reunions and things like that. But it's always fun for the Alabama Auburn game. There's nothing like it. I don't care who you root for, who you pull for, whether you care about SEC football or not. If you're a sports fan in general, and you can't appreciate the Alabama-Auburn rivalry, then I don't think you're a true sports fan. There's lots of people who aren't football fans that watch the Super Bowl. I'm not a NASCAR fan, but I watch the Daytona 500. If you're not watching the Alabama-Auburn game every year, I don't see how you can call yourself a true sports fan. It's got to be, it's right up there with Red Sox Yankees for sure, with one of the biggest rivalries, I think, in all of sports in the United States.
And I'll go ahead and it's no secret. There's a lot of passion behind my videos that I make. Most of them are true to form. And then if you've lived in Alabama and you're in Alabama or a Barner fan, one or the other. It's one or the other. It's not like going to another state and being a bandwagon fan. It's true to life. You're either Alabama or you're Auburn, and it can get violent, to be honest with you. That's how deep those roots run in that state, and I really wouldn't have it any other way. But like you said, it's probably it's probably up there as far as rivalry games, up there in the top 3 or 4 in all of sports. It almost transcends sports, in my opinion. But
it's got to be. Even way before I had a YouTube channel, or definitely way before I knew anything about the TTC, one of my favorite parts of the college football season every year was the day after the Auburn-Alabama game. I would go on YouTube and I would type in Alabama-Auburn reaction. And every year there's hundreds of videos on YouTube of people filming themselves, especially, the game 2 years ago. And I wasn't in the TTC 2 years ago. I wasn't even making YouTube videos, but I mean, you couldn't go on Facebook or Twitter anywhere without seeing some reaction video from that Kick 6 game from 2 years ago, which was one of the greatest college football games I've ever seen. I know that was hard, obviously a hard one for Bama fans, but definitely a great game. But let's get into some news here. I'm going to get into some news. I'm going to let you get into some excuses. But Cyrus Jones, domestic violence. Now, this story just came out, I guess, and I haven't heard a whole lot about it other than it involves maybe he destroyed his girlfriend's cell phone. Or something like that. Nick Saban made a statement today that, is exactly what you would expect him to say. We're going to, wait and see what the facts are, blah, blah, blah. Of course, Cyrus Jones is a starter, so he's not getting kicked off the team. But what's your opinion on this matter, sir?
Well, it's not just Cyrus Jones. It's a lot of athletes, high-profile athletes. And if you want to know my honest opinion on it, when you go out and get these 4- and 5-star recruits, these kids are coming out of high school already entitled, already thinking, they're on top of the world right now, and they can do no wrong. And when you go to a place like Alabama, which is the cream of the crop as far as college football goes, in my opinion, they're going to try to get away with whatever they can, and sometimes you're going to run into some thugs. That's just how it is. I hate to say it like that, but these are all young kids, young athletes, and when you go into a place like Alabama, like I said, you're going to run into some people like that. You're going to have some bad apples, and they're going to try to spoil the bunch. But I think overall, Nick Saban's done a fairly decent job in his tenure there of keeping everything under wraps. And like I said, you're going to have some bad apples, so there's nothing you can do about that, I don't think.
Yeah, I tend to agree with pretty much everything you said there. God knows, as a Georgia fan, Uncle Lou's in no position to judge some other program in terms of kids getting in trouble and things like that. We've had more than our fair share. I think what's more important, because like you said, these kids are going to get recruited. Somebody's going to take them. And so if they're good enough, it might as well be Georgia or Alabama or fill in the blank.
Right.
And the coaches and the staff, and upperclassmen on the team and things like that, they have to, take these kids and, try to keep them on the straight and narrow, but it's just impossible to do it 100% of the time. I think it's more important how these coaches and administrations handle these situations when they arise. I think that's a bigger deal than, this school had 4 people arrested, this school had 2, whatever the case may be.
I agree with that.
Auburn is probably the worst example. They'll take anybody and everybody. Of course, Alabama took a dud too, and it came back to bite you, sir. With Jonathan Taylor, of course, he was kicked off of UGA for domestic violence, and just recently got kicked off of Alabama for the same thing. But these things happen. There's no avoiding them. I agree with you there. And I don't think anybody can point at Alabama and say they're always getting in trouble. Alabama has been under a spotlight for the last 6 or 7 years. Florida State loves to complain that they were picked on last year because they were the defending national champions, and that's the only reason all their stuff got blown up and out of proportion. And it was, Jimbo Fisher said it was the media's fault. Well, Alabama's been dealing with that for 5-6 years straight. And you never saw anything out of Alabama like what you saw out of Florida State last year. So go ahead.
I know your feelings on Florida State and Jameis Winston, and I concur with that because that guy is nothing but a thug, in my opinion. I really think, obviously, where there's smoke, there's fire. I know, legally speaking, I don't think he's gotten in much trouble at all, but you've got a pattern of behavior there. It's just negative, continuously. Fuck her in the pussy, crab legs, whatever the case may be. That definitely shines a negative light on your university, and Jimbo Fisher continually let him get away with that. And the media let him get away with it. I mean, he's a media darling. I mean, he really is. No matter how they try to portray him, that's the reason he's going to be the number one pick. I don't think it's going to be all because of his talent. It's just the media loves Jameis Winston because the media, that's just how the media is. But getting back to Alabama, I mean, they don't have a player like that really just shines in the media like that. And so I think that really helps. And it helps to have Nick Saban, the so-called Darth Vader of college football, with an iron fist. I mean, that really helps too. So,
Yeah, and I think that's a big difference between Florida State and a lot of other universities, and we'll use Alabama as an example with Nick Saban. But I think Jimbo Fisher has lost a lot of respect nationally. Now, they circled the wagons in Tallahassee, and Florida State fans will kiss his feet, and I get it. That's your team. But the way Jimbo Fisher handled those situations, not just with Jameis Winston, but there was a litany of players on that team that got in trouble. Things were swept under the rug. You had a starting receiver charged with 6-7 felonies. They all disappeared. I mean, these things are no secrets. And it just gets back to what we said to start with. It's how you handle the situations when they come up. Some of what these kids are going to do are out of your control. You can't babysit them 24/7. All you can do is handle the situations the best you can when they come up.
I agree.
Now, a question that I always like to ask Alabama fans here, because the answer tends to change from fan to fan. But can you refresh Uncle Lou's memory on how many national titles Alabama has?
We have 15 national
titles. In your opinion. 15?
My opinion is 15.
Okay. So 3 losses in a year, losing the bowl game. You're okay with claiming that as a national championship year?
I will take what I can get, Uncle Lou.
Okay.
You may not agree, but there's not going to be a lot of people that agree. But if
I think 10 is probably. Is it 10? Is it 10 the number that everyone agrees on? I know it's still the most, so I'm not trying to take anything away. But
I believe it. I want to say 9 or 10.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure, but it's somewhere like that. But
if there's anybody that doesn't know what we're talking about. Yeah, if there's anybody that doesn't know what we're talking about, back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, you had all different kinds of polls that would come out at the end of the year. There was rarely a consensus national champion, and there was one particular year, the one I was talking about earlier, where Alabama had a couple of losses, lost its bowl game, and some reporter in Louisiana somewhere came up with his own poll at the end of the year and put Alabama as number 1, and Alabama claims that as a national title. Uncle Lou leans closer towards the 10 mark, but again, are you really putting down Alabama if you say they only have 10 national titles? It's still, twice as many as anyone else has, or almost twice as many?
That's what I was going to say. I mean, really, irregardless of how many you claim national titles, as far as national titles go, the tradition of Alabama, I mean, is second to none. It's up there with Michigan. It's up there with Notre Dame, which I hate as much as you do. But, I mean, if you go back and look over the last 100 years, it's probably the best college football program that has been.
Yeah, and I don't think –
It doesn't really matter how many – it doesn't matter national titles to me, really. Honestly, I'll claim as many as I can. But, man, you go back to Bear Bryant, Frank Thomas, and, the list goes on and on. I mean, we've had – great coaches, great players, and great tradition, and that's all that I'm really concerned about.
Speaking of Bear Bryant, I want to talk about Bear Bryant Jr. You mentioned the word thug earlier. Now, I respect Bear Bryant Sr., I guess it is. You can't argue with what he did. Paul Bear Bryant Jr. To me, is a bully. The situation at UAB. Now, a lot of politics are involved in this in Alabama. The state legislature, it's very complicated. There's no clear-cut answers here, but everything points to basically Bear Bryant Jr. holding a 30 or 40-year grudge against something that somebody said about his daddy back in the 70s. And he basically used his position within the university system of Alabama to shut down UAB's football program. He refused to schedule UAB while UAB had a program. He wouldn't even play UAB. He blocked Jimbo Fisher at one point from getting the job at UAB because he thought Jimbo Fisher was too good of a coach, and he didn't want UAB to have that good of a coach. Do Alabama fans, I probably know the answer to this already, but does Bear Bryant Jr. have 100% support from Alabama fans, or is there even maybe a small percentage of Alabama fans that are a little bit tired of his arrogance?
Well, I will just give you my opinion. Bear Bryant Jr. is not Bear Bryant Sr. Bear Bryant Jr. to me is scum for basically shutting down the UAB program because obviously it's not the University of Alabama, but it's the University of Alabama Birmingham, and they've had a good program. It's not some your average dumpster fire program. They've actually had a decent competitive football program for the last 20 to 25 years. And to get it shut down like that just because you want to play politics because you're pissed for whatever reason at that university and you think you're high and mighty because you basically rule the University of Alabama, it's not cool in my opinion. But I'm sure you saw, did you see where those players, when they had that interview, when they found out that the UAB program was being shut down? That was hard to watch for me. Some of those players, that player that was just like flipping out, man. And I felt bad for those players just finding out, you're going to a Division I school on a scholarship. And some of those, that was a senior that was talking. He's been there for 4 years, and to find out that it's getting shut down because you got somebody who wants to play bullshit and play politics and think they're too good for UAB is not good enough for the state of Alabama. Not cool in my opinion. I'm still going to be Clemson Tide till I die, but it's not fair. I don't think.
UAB as a school, of course, will survive, but it's sad for the players, like you said. Now, for the freshmen, sophomore, and juniors, of course, they were able to transfer, and the NCAA has granted them a waiver. They don't have to sit out. I'm not sure about Alabama. Georgia actually picked up probably their best defensive player. Jake Gannis was his name. He's an inside linebacker. And he'll probably be starting this year for UGA. So for him, it worked out good, but he's in the minority. I mean, most of the guys that played there are going to have a hard time fitting in somewhere else, especially if you were a junior and you're looking to maybe go somewhere for just 1 year and you're not at the level of a Jake Gannis that can pretty much pick where he wants to go. So it was sad. And I saw on the news the other day, this is what actually made me think about it to ask you about it, but I saw on the news or on Facebook or something a couple of days ago, they just had a graduation ceremony there at UAB, and some of the football players wore their helmets to the graduation ceremony and refused to shake some people's hands and things like that. So, obviously they're affected, and they're the ones that are really going to feel the brunt of it. I mean, UAB and the University of Alabama and Bear Bryant Jr. are sleeping just fine.
Yeah.
Well, it's just sad.
And hats off to those guys for actually showing up and doing that. I think that's pretty noble of them to show up in their helmets and prove a point. But I do feel bad for those guys, the upperclassmen, because that's probably the end for them. Unless Jake Gaddis,
a lot of those kids, a lot of those kids, when they get offers to go play for those schools, they have that hope in the back of their head, I guess, that they'll make it to the NFL one day. But realistically, most people that go to Division I don't even make it to the NFL. The big time Power 6 conferences. So you start talking about kids at UAB or Georgia Southern or these schools like that. I mean, they pretty much know that's the end of the line, and to have it sort of the rug pulled out from under them like that, it was a shame for sure. But I want to talk about 3 other schools that are struggling lately, and see if we can figure out why. Number 1 is actually an NFL team, the Oakland Raiders. Of course, have just been god-awful the last 4 or 5 years. Number 2, Tennessee Volunteers, god-awful for the last 4 or 5 years. And Southern Cal, perennial power, similar to Alabama, who have just struggled over the last 4 or 5 years. And I was wondering if you can help me figure out what these 3 schools have in common.
I have no idea where you're going with this story.
Well, I figured you might have had selective memory. Luckily, I made some notes here, but all 3 of these schools made the decision to hire Lane Kiffin, as did the University of Alabama. Now, I said it all last year that I thought this was the dumbest move in the history of college football. Nick Saban had built one of the most powerful dynasties in the history of college football. Lane Kiffin's a lightning rod of controversy. He's left a trail of tears everywhere he's been. Alabama was winning without an offense. They had power running backs, an offensive line. They never had an NFL quarterback, and they were winning 12 games a year, and they were averaging a national title every other year for 5 or 6 years. Why bring in Lane Kiffin? What possible benefit? I mean, I don't see any. You couldn't go any higher than where you're at. I don't see the benefit. Help Uncle Lou understand.
Well, there's no secret. This guy is a shitty head coach. No matter where he's gone, he has left a path of destruction as far as head coaching goes. But when the guy had the horses at USC back in the 2004, 2005, the Reggie Bush, the Matt Leinart, the Carson Palmer, the Lindell White, whatever, he had those horses last year with Alabama. He didn't have to take on all that head coaching responsibility. Nick Saban's there to do that. Like I said, the guy's got an iron fist. The guy is a good offensive coordinator. He may be a shitty head coach, but he's a good offensive coordinator.
Okay. Now, one of the primary reasons that was floated around that as far as why it was brought in, of course, Alabama was in sort of a dire straits in their quarterback situation. They had a converted running back, Blake Sims, lined up to be the starter. They brought in Jake Coker from Florida State, and they brought in the guru, Lane Kiffin, and he was going to turn one or both of those 2 players into the next Dan Marino. Of course, we all saw that didn't happen. Blake Sims ended up being the starter. If it wasn't for Amari Cooper, I mean, I don't care what anybody wants to say. Amari Coopers aren't growing on trees, and if it wouldn't have been for Amari Cooper, Blake Sims wouldn't have had half the stats and things that he had. So now you got Jake Coker, year 2 under Lane Kiffin and Nick Saban. In the spring game, he barely completed 50% of his passes when you're not even allowed to touch the quarterback. So he didn't even have to worry about getting hit or sacked. He was barely able to complete 50%. He did throw 1 touchdown, but he also threw a pick-6 interception. What's the problem? You have number 1 recruiting class every year. You can get almost any player you want. Why is it you think that Alabama, and I'm not taking anything away from A.J. McCarron or Greg McElroy or any of these guys. They won national titles. They were great college quarterbacks. What is it you think that Alabama, for whatever reason, can't seem to get what most people would consider to be a stud, surefire NFL type quarterback?
I don't, and that's a question that I thought about myself, especially for the last few years. Blake Sims, a converted running back, is not your prototypical quarterback, obviously. Not something you want going for a national title if that's what you're shooting for. But, I really can't – I don't know the answer to that question, to be honest with you. That's something that I've thought about myself over the past few years. I mean, you had John Parker Wilson, you went to Greg McElroy, then you got A.J. McCarron. But the fact of the matter is that those guys got it done.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Reason. I mean, obviously they had great players around them, and I think that's what really – you have to step up your game if you're going to play quarterback at Alabama, no matter who's surrounding you. You've got the spotlight on you at all times. But to answer your question, I really don't know why. I don't know if it's a certain quarterback that they're looking for, but, I mean, it seems like they'd be looking for a pro-style quarterback, but for whatever reason, they just can't find that stud quarterback they've been looking for. And it's something that's bothered me for the last 4 or 5 years. So hopefully they can get something out of Coker or Bateman or hell, even if they got to go get Braxton Miller, and I know that's another can of worms.
That's still a possibility. Rumors all over the place on Braxton Miller, so no telling where he's going to end up. We'll see, I guess. But speaking of things that have bothered you for 4 or 5 years, please explain your loss to Louisiana Monroe in 2007.
Everybody's got an off game. It was Nick Saban's first year.
But you're Alabama, sir. You're Alabama. You should beat UL Monroe just by getting off the bus, sir.
I think we were playing our water boy that day. I'm not sure. I think everybody was sick with mono and chicken pox, but I don't really recall that game very much. That's a distant memory. That's a distant memory, Lou.
All right. Well, let's talk about some more. Let's talk about some more. All right. Well, we'll talk about some more recent memories here. 2 years ago in the Sugar Bowl, Oklahoma. What's the problem there?
I'm going to use that excuse, guy. We didn't show up.
Didn't want to be there. You didn't want to be there.
We didn't want to be there.
Okay.
We didn't want to be there. I wanted to be in a national title game. Listen, that's just what I know everybody wants to win a national title every year, but when you get used to winning national titles, especially, I have no excuse for the Utah game in 2009. I don't know what happened that game. We didn't show up for that game. I guess we didn't want to be there. But then we won 2 national titles in a row. And then when you're going for a third and you have a big letdown like that, I know it's an excuse, but the players just didn't show up for that game. We got beat fair and square. We got beat on the field. We got our ass whooped that night. I know I say we, but I include myself in that Alabama nation. We got our ass whooped that night. I really don't have any excuses for that, but you can tell the players just didn't want to be there because they didn't fight till the second half.
I can understand that. Now, did the players want to be in the playoff game last year? Or did they think that because they were Alabama, they should just get a bye?
I think it was a combination of we almost didn't show. You know what? Bottom line, Ohio State, obviously, they were the better team that night. They were the better team. They won the national title, Lou. But I don't know what else to say.
They did.
They won the national title. They beat us fair and square. I mean, it was a close game. I mean, it came literally down to the last few plays of the game, and then they went in. Well, I actually thought Oregon was going to beat the way they handled Florida State, but you saw Ohio State just dominated Oregon. So, in my opinion, going back to last year, what you were talking about, Lane Kiffin, with a converted running back, and yes, I know we had Amari Cooper, and that was without Amari Cooper, he wouldn't have done half of that. But they set records for points, yardage, all kinds of stuff, even with subpar running, a rushing attack. TJ Yeldon fumbling the ball, Derrick Henry not running up to his potential, and Blake Sims not playing till the second half, throwing interception after interception every single game. To be in that spot, to actually be in the playoff, I was pretty happy about it, the way our season ended. Okay, well, I just want to throw one more jab in real quick, and then we're going to get to something that you can brag about. That was Ohio State's only postseason victory against the SEC, correct? Ever? 1-10. I believe you told me it's 1-10. So we'll 1-10. Yep, 1-10. And so Ohio State never beat an SEC team in a bowl game or the postseason until they beat Alabama. All right, now let's talk about the 2012 SEC championship game, or as I refer to it, the national title game. What a game. What a game. I have said this since the day that game ended, and my mind has not changed. Even though Georgia lost that game, that is the best college football game I've ever seen. I wasn't at the game. I watched it on TV. And I know part of the, if I wasn't a Georgia fan, I would probably have some other game that I'm not trying to say that that's the best college football game in the history of college football, but as far as games that I've personally seen as a Georgia fan, just the emotions involved in that game,
coming down to the end like it did, for me, my mind has not changed. It was the best college football game I've ever seen. Of course, as everyone likes to remind me, the field is 100 yards long, not 96 yards long. And the game is 60 minutes long, not 60 minutes and 10 seconds, which would be great. But I'm sure you watched that game. Were you there? Did you watch it on TV?
Oh, of course. I watched it in the comfort of my own home, and man, I mean, I will agree with you. If it wasn't the best game, it's top 2 as far as I'm concerned in Alabama history. Because there was so many ebbs and flows in that game. It was back and forth. Just when you think one team had the other one down, and it was mostly Alabama, but Aaron Murray kept fighting back. I was hoping the Titans would actually draft Aaron Murray last year, not Benberger, but I don't always get what I want. But Aaron Murray to go up, man, he was a stud. He was a definite stud that day. Just came up a couple of yards short, honestly. But
it was a hell of a game, and to watch y'all put that whooping. Yeah, I bet you did. To watch y'all put that whooping on Notre Dame a month later, I mean, it made it that much worse as a Georgia fan. I said all along, and this isn't to take anything away from Alabama that year, but I said all along there was probably 7 or 8 teams that would have beat Notre Dame that year. Notre Dame got into that game based off of its name alone and a fairly easy schedule and a little bit of luck. But you just walked the floor with them.
They got in because of Lene Kakua.
Yeah.
That's all that was.
That's right. Manti Te'o's fake girlfriend. Yeah. Y'all did win the national title that year. But man, what a game, the 2012 national title game. All right, now the last topic, and then we got to go. No one's going to watch this whole video because it's way too long. But me and you will both watch it as soon as it's uploaded, I'm sure. So we'll get at least 2 views.
Yes,
but October 3rd, 2015, you guys come to Athens to play. I haven't looked at Alabama's schedule leading up to that game. We do play Carolina prior to playing you guys. Other than that, we play 3 cupcakes. So in Carolina, I think is going to be a complete dumpster fire this year. Of course, I think that every year. They're my Auburn. For you, I can't stand South Carolina. But I fully expect Georgia to be undefeated going into that game on October 3rd. I want Alabama to be undefeated as well. You probably know the schedule better, the Alabama schedule better than I do. I don't know if you have any tough games before that or not.
Well, yeah, we open with Wisconsin.
Oh, that's right.
So that's going to be, if we can win that game, we will probably go in undefeated because I think we play UL Monroe and I'm not sure who we played before that, but we should be undefeated going into that game, honestly. So if we can get past Wisconsin, that's a big if we can get past Wisconsin.
Is that game in Atlanta or
top 10?
Where's that?
Yeah,
where's the Wisconsin game? Atlanta? Okay. Yeah, that'll be a good one for
sure.
sure.
It's a Chick-fil-A Classic,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that, Wisconsin, I'm surprised they haven't won a national title in the last 10, 15 years, honestly. They're always up there, so that's going to be a huge game for Alabama.
Yeah.
If they can get past Wisconsin, they can probably go pretty far.
Yeah. Now, of course, the last time Alabama came into Athens, Georgia was ranked number 1 in the country preseason. We wore the black jerseys. It didn't work out too well. It seemed like by the time the coin toss was even over, you guys were up 28-0. I think we came back in the second half and made the score look a lot more respectable than the game really was. But the game was over after the first quarter. And you guys just took your foot off the gas and played defense and ran the ball for the last 3 quarters of the game. Basically, you just played keep away. You probably easily could have beat us by 40 or 50 points that night, but. So I hope it's a closer game this time, win or lose. I think it's going to be one of the biggest games of the college football year this year. I fully expect game day to be at that game. If Georgia and Alabama are undefeated, there's no doubt in my mind college game day will be broadcasting from there. It should be one hell of an environment up there. We don't play Alabama every year. For you guys who don't follow the SEC or who are NFL fans or whatever, Georgia and Alabama, the way the system works right now, we only play each other about once every 6 or 7 years. during the regular season. So unless we meet in the SEC championship game, we don't play each other but once every 6 or 7 years. And Georgia's going to have a good team this year. Of course, Alabama's going to, they have a good team every year. It's going to be one of the top games of college football this year. I'm going to the game. I've told Mrs. Lou and anyone else that I need to get permission from or whatever, that unless I'm dead or in jail, I will be in Athens on October 3rd. I'm not going to miss that one. And I don't know. We'll see. We got a long time to go before the season starts. We're going to wrap this thing up. It's been over 30 minutes and people are going to quit watching. But anyway, thanks everybody for watching. Bama Fanman, thanks for coming on. This was a great interview. I love talking college football. I'm going to give you the last word. And thank you.
Appreciate it, Lou. All I'm going to say is I'm going to keep repping Alabama. I hope we have a great season. I hope we have a great season. Hell, I hope we win another national title this year. But I love getting on here and repping my team, and I know everybody in the TTC does also. I appreciate you, Lou. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Talk to you guys later. Good morning.